I wanted to talk about how you become sincere about soul progression. But let's first ask some fundamental questions. Why learn anything about God's truth? What's the purpose to learning things about God's truth? And we'll use the mics from now on if we can, just both in the middle there. So, Lena, you want to start? Then we'll go down to Suze.
Make the world a better place and to become happier personally.
Well, I think that's an effect of learning God's truth, but I don't think it's the primary purpose. So, Suze?
Mine was much the same. It was contributing to a less destructive world.
Yep, so that's an effect.
Yeah, but
Yep.
I can also see that it'll help you, like, divest a lot of your pain and the things that your injuries cause in you.
Yeah, but that's a very selfish, you could say it's a sort of almost a selfish effect. Something that just affects you. But
I was also going to say, and that also helps you realise the things that you do to other people.
Mm-hmm. True, but if we had to summarise what's the purpose of like listening to God's truth, these are all effects.
Yeah.
Nikki, you wanna, and if we go across to Rob with that other mic, if we can just have that mic circulating.
Is it to be more loving? Because if you get to know God's truth more,
yep,
you'd also learn more about love at the same time.
Correct. So what does it mean to be more loving? What
God's definition of what love is.
Okay, so you have to first learn what God's definition of love is. But then, how does it affect you? Like, becoming more loving has a number of side effects.
Oh yes. So you're more logical, you're more sensitive, you think about everything rather than just a little part of stuff.
Yeah. So if you had to lump all of that into one thing, what would you call that? Elsa?
Loving.
Well, it is loving, yes, but we need to use a mic, Elsa. But I'm asking for, there's a name that all the way through the Patrick messages it's called this, and I don't know if I can say much more. otherwise I'll let you know. Ange, you want to have a step? And then Rob or Ange?
I reckon it's because God designed us to grow infinitely, basically.
Yes.
So it's fulfilling the purpose of our design, even, like
correct.
What we're made to do.
So what is growing infinitely called? What do we call it? What have we called it?
Problem.
Who are you? You are a soul,
Yeah.
and growth is progression. So is that fundamental?
Everyone
It's
thought that
soul
was too
progression,
easy.
right? It's soul progression. So the purpose of becoming more loving is really progression of the soul, isn't it? Now, as your soul progresses, you have the net effect of that is that you become a more loving individual. You also help the world. All the other effects, that some of which you've already mentioned, and of course there are a myriad of them, literally millions of effects that can occur from soul progression. All of those effects are the result of your soul progression. And if you decide to not progress, which is a decision you're able to make to a degree, because when I say to a degree, the laws themselves are actually focusing you and sort of forcing you in a way into progression. So to a degree you can fight that process, but the problem is that you can fight the process for a fair time given the exercise of your will. You can fight that process for a fair time, and I've seen people fight it for thousands of years, that process of progression. You can fight it, but at the end of the day, you are going to, at some point, progress. Just like, when you were a child, at some point, you were going to become a teenager. That is the net effect of the way God's designed the universe and the way you grow up in it. So that is definitely going to happen, but how fast that happens is determined only by you and nothing else really. And the problem with it being determined by you, if you could say it's a problem, is that if you are very resistive and you are not very self-reflective and you are avoiding the reality of things from God's perspective, then of course your growth is going to be very, very slow. Alternatively, if you accept God's laws and God's truth, your progress can potentially be very rapid. It just depends upon you. So what I would like to talk about today is what depends on you with regard to your progression. How do you engage progression from a place where most of us begin thinking we don't need to? Most of us have a relatively arrogant view of I've got things down. Anybody who's relatively intelligent generally believes they understand a lot already and that they don't need a lot of assistance or help to understand more. The average person is quite self-absorbed, but also, unfortunately, quite unaware of their own condition. And on earth in particular, your condition is measured by how well you sort of fit into society. And so on earth, your condition is very much like judged externally, and also we have a tendency then to set up inside of ourselves a sort of a personal judgment of, I get along with everybody pretty well, and I'm getting along with my life pretty well, and I can look after myself pretty well, and all of those kind of things. So I must be pretty developed and mustn't need a lot of assistance or help in order to progress, right? So there is this general feeling that develops in most people on earth that they're already sort of pretty knowledgeable about what's going on in their life and what is affecting their life and what kind of, you could say what their state actually is. There is a personal judgment of state which unfortunately does not mirror God's assessment of your state. Or you could say God's law's assessment of your state. So how do you get from a state where you believe everything's quite okay, but progress towards a place where you start to see, everything isn't okay? And also, how do you change when you already believe everything's okay? Can you see it's quite difficult, isn't it, to make changes to your life if you already believe you understand most things and you can assess most things accurately, and you believe you're in pretty good shape yourself? It's very hard to then go, okay, what do I need to change? Because when you're happy with your own assessment of yourself, there's very little you'll probably change. That's the fact, right? So we were talking, Mary and I, this morning, we were out for a walk and just talking about, what governs whether you grow or not? Given that soul progression is the sort of universal requirement of your future existence, like always progressing, is sort of, that's going to be happening. And God's designed a universe where progression almost happens naturally in some cases. But there's other areas where progression can't happen naturally. And this is in particular the relationship with God's side of things. Progression is not going to happen naturally with regard to your relationship with God, because that has to be driven totally by another factor which comes from within inside of yourself called desire. Remember, in the Paget messages and what I've been sharing with you for many years is you need to pray in order to receive God's love. That's a fundamental principle of becoming more loving God's way. But what is prayer? So how do we define prayer? Ella?
A sincere desire from your heart, that your real feelings, your honest feelings from your soul about whatever it is that you're. So if you've got a sincere question, like I want to receive God's love, that will come from my soul as a question, as a feeling of I really like that.
All right. So it has to be a feeling that exists in you that's sincere, right? Now, the majority of us, when we start this process, have very little personal integrity. So we think we're sincere when we're often not, right? Now, God's laws with regard to the reception of God's love measure sincerity. So if we ask for God's love and don't receive it, it's an immediate indication that we're insincere, right? God's already saying you're insincere. If God wants to give you anything you sincerely ask for, so, and particularly He wants to give you His love. It's a gift that He wants to give you. So if I ask for it and I don't receive it, then I am insincere. It's as simple as that. Now, most of us go, at that point, we go, oh, but I've tried to ask for God's love and God's not given it to me. Now, that's not actually a truth, is it? Because God always gives it to a person who's sincere. That is the truth. So if we're not receiving it, it means that we're not sincere in some way or other. So the key is, how do I become a person with personal integrity who is sincere? Because if I can't be sincere in my prayer with God, then I'm not going to receive God's love. It's something that is always going to elude me because of my personal lack of sincerity. So it requires that I have feelings that are sincere. And this is the tricky part about our progress. How to go about developing sincere feelings. Because remember, they're not thoughts that you need to develop that are sincere. They're going to have to be feelings that are sincere. It's almost like, isn't it, if you think about thoughts versus feelings, many of us believe in our mind that we're sincere when we say to somebody, oh, I love you, for example. We say, like in a partnership, you might say, oh, I love you. But actually, you might not realise in the saying of that actually even with my partner I'm being insincere because I actually love what she gives me, which is not the same as loving her. It's only responding to what she's already gifting me, right? And that is not a sincere expression of love. A sincere expression of love, it comes from my heart without being motivated by the other person and whatever they have done or felt about me. Right? So it's interesting on this trip that's coming up already, we're finding that there are many people who are being insincere about their attendance. And the main reason why they are is because they have sort of beliefs that I already know divine truth. I already know what God's laws are. I already think I'm in a pretty good state. But you know, those other people who are coming along to the group, they're not so nice to me and everything. And I don't know if I want to go under those circumstances. And I'm going, but like Mary and I are travelling like 15,000 kilometres in some cases to their location at their invitation, and they're not going to be there. It's sort of like they invited us to come, and yet they're not turning up because they're upset with somebody else who's there. How sincere is the effort to love someone else? Like, this is the problem in the world, isn't it? Most of us think we're looking for love or that we want to be in a state where we receive love. But not a lot of us really want to give it under all circumstances, even when other people are unkind to us. Yeah. Courtney and I this morning were talking about dealing with an engineer that we've been trying to work with getting some engineering work done. And this particular engineer, Corny and I sent a whole set of instructions to at the beginning. We also sent some drawings to him, and he raised some issues with those drawings, so we sent some new drawings to him. And what we got back from him was he ignored every single request we made almost with regard to the design of what we wanted him to design. Now, Corny then asked me, well, what am I going to do about that? He also is going to send me a bill for $3,000 for that work. What would you do about it? So we discussed a bit this morning, Corny and I, what would love of him do in that situation, as well as love of self? What would you do? Often what we do is we go, oh, this is very unfair. He's not doing what we requested. I'm going to tell him that I'm going to refuse to pay him because he didn't give me what I wanted. He hasn't listened to me at all, and he hasn't designed something that we were prepared to build. And we did tell him quite clearly right from the beginning that was the case. So the temptation would be to withhold payment until you get what you asked for.
Or to try and force what you asked for.
Or to try and force what you asked for,
Yeah.
Yep. But if you're loving, you would just say, this isn't working. Tell him it's not working. Get him to send the bill. Pay the bill. And then if he asks, why have you stopped working with me? Now you're open to saying why. But before then, it's really quite pointless, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You've already told him what you wanted and he's already not done it. So quite pointless doing that.
You can't force someone to do something loving. That has to be based on their desire. So if you're trying to force them then to give you the loving result, you're actually breaking a law and wasting your time.
And also you're now being unloving.
Yeah.
Because you're now trying to use force
to
influence another person's choices or decisions. Yep. So the most loving course of action would be to pay the bill, even though he didn't give you anything of what you wanted. And then if down the track he does ask, why did you do that? Then there's an opportunity to share with him why. Right?
And of course you're not going to go back and do business with him again.
Because that would be unloving to you to do that. So, but most of us don't live by those standards, do we? We have a different set of standards. We say, oh, but what about it's unjust to us, and what about love of me, and what about... And most of us are so focused on love of ourselves, someone loving us, then we forget about what it means to love someone else. So one of the things I notice a lot when we travel is that everyone's so focused on wanting to be loved, but not wanting to be loving. And soul progression is all about you becoming loving, not other people. They have the right, given the fact that they have free will, to choose to be unloving. And the question then becomes, well, even if they are unloving, what are you going to be? Are you going to be loving or unloving? That's your choice. Now, your soul progression depends upon that choice. And as you progress in your soul, you will become more loving no matter whether other people around you are loving or not. You will be more loving. It doesn't mean that you'll accept things without saying no, because you're allowed to say no and still be loving. It doesn't mean you'll accept bad treatment without saying, no, I'm not accepting that anymore, because you're allowed to do that as well. That would also be loving.
Well, that's loving to you and them.
And to you and them. Yeah. But it does mean that you wouldn't be forcing anybody's will. You wouldn't be bribing them. You wouldn't be manipulating them. You wouldn't be trying to manipulate an outcome that you want anymore. You would just go, no, I'm doing that, or yes, I'm doing this. But you would not try to force or manipulate the person, because that would be unloving. Right? Now, how do we get to the stage where we believe that? Internally, like actually feel it in every situation we're living in, that something happens between, say, yourself and your partner, and you are going to be loving no matter what she or he is. And what happens with your mum and dad and your brother and sister and your friends and your workmates and your colleagues and even just the average person you meet Joe Blow down the road. What happens in the world? How are you going to be? The choices you make will determine your condition right now, but also the choices you make right now will determine your future condition, because obviously unless there is a desire in you to have a better future condition, a better future condition is not really possible. A better future condition for myself is based upon my desiring a better future condition, and then working through for myself all of the realities about my current condition, and hopefully being able to change that. That's what it's dependent upon.
And something you were talking about this morning, we were talking about the difference between focusing on even your emotions and needing to be humble, rather than having the aspiration or the desire to be loving in all circumstances, and measuring yourself against that, whether or not you're being loving, and then dealing with whatever is preventing you, or whatever. If you make the decision to be loving, then you will naturally be more humble to all the things that oppose that. But if you just get very self-focused, as is very common, isn't it? Because people are very focused on being loved, as you say. You take the focus off loving others, and then you're not a very good assessor of your own condition and of your own, particularly your own capacity to love others, because you're very focused on being loved and what you're getting, and you're measuring even your condition through how others are treating you, rather than how you're treating others.
So it even goes to the point, like, if I'm being treated well by Mary, I think it's because I'm a nice guy, rather than thinking that it's because she's a nice girl. Do you see the difference? Like, she's the one being loving, and I'm the one getting treated lovingly. And then if I think, it's because I'm a nice guy, how arrogant is that? It's really because she's a nice girl and she's treating me lovingly. Does that make sense to you? And so quite often, because of this sort of focus we have, I want to be loved, I'm looking at receiving only, really. And once I do receive, I think, I must be a nice guy because I'm receiving love by everybody. And actually it has nothing to do with me being a nice guy at all. It has everything to do with them being nice people, and them being developed enough to love me. So quite often we believe that when we are loved, it means that we were good. But the converse is also true. Quite often it means that when we're not loved, we think it's our fault. And that may not be true, right? Because obviously a person who's treating us unlovingly is about their development, not yours. And a person who's treating you lovingly, it's about their development, not yours. In both cases, it's about their development, one way or the other, not yours. Right? But frequently, because we believe otherwise, we sort of feel it's all about how nice we are, that we get treated nicely by others. And obviously that's not the case.
Yeah, and sometimes it's even worse. Sometimes we go, they're treating me nicely. I'm really a good person. Yeah. They're treating me unlovingly. They're really terrible people. Yeah,
we neglect the I in both cases. Yeah. So how do I get, like at the beginning, when it comes to, say, developing a closer relationship with God in particular, but even if it comes to just general soul progression, where not even a relationship with God is involved, how do I get from where I am now, which to a state where I can see where I am now, like accurately see, not through my own eyes, but through the eyes of the law, through God's eyes, if you like. Or you could say through the eyes of the moral laws that God, or moral principles that God has firmly established, right? That upon which my soul condition is entirely dependent. So my soul condition isn't dependent upon me breaking physical laws so much, is it? It's dependent upon breaking those higher moral laws, the spiritual laws, the laws surrounding love and the laws surrounding like how I use my will, those laws. These are the laws that are really important to like get some kind of like assessment and agreement of internally, not just not because somebody else has told us, not because somebody else is suggesting it, not because somebody else has told us, oh, you're not very nice like that, or you are nice like that, not because of getting any feedback, but because we ourselves can measure the difference between our own condition and the assessment of the law regarding our condition. Because soul progression is not about what you feel is progression. It's not about what you believe and meeting your beliefs better. It's about what God has established as law, and you could say the measure of your progression is how in harmony with that law you become. So the more disharmonious with, you could call it natural law or God's laws, the more disharmonious I am with those laws, the less progression I am making, and my soul condition is poor. The more harmonious I become with those laws, the more my soul condition improves, and the more I am now harmonious with the law. Right? The more I am, you could say, soul developed, becoming developed as a soul. So how do I get from the state where I think I'm good to the state where I know what the law is saying about me? Right? How do I make that transition? Is a good question, isn't it?
What do you guys reckon?
What do you guys reckon? How do you make the transition between like seeing yourself through your own rose-coloured eyes, if you like, when you look in the mirror, versus seeing yourself by the reflection that the law is trying to bring you? Right? Nikki?
Could you be self-reflective? And so in the example you gave, Corny and the builder, do the loving thing and then feel your feelings and realise like you don't have loving feelings. So for example... But
how do you even know what the loving thing is? Because you're in that state where you're not developed, you're going to think the loving thing is that I've paid my money and I'm not getting what I wanted. So the loving thing is to say to him, where's what I paid for?
Is it realising that you've got that feeling, realising you've got anger about something?
Well, it is, but if I'm in this self-righteous justification
You're
saying
not going to realise
I should get what I pay for, then how do I even see that it's anger that's driving my...
If you think about it for yourself, Nikki, the way you treat women, you think that's totally legitimate, and suddenly having women around you going, Nikki, not so good, Nikki, not so good.
But even with the women around you telling
still
Nikki not so good, you're still going, yeah, it is. So, like, you can have, and I've seen you've had 5 or 6 women tell you directly to your face how you treat women is bad, and yet you don't think so.
Your feeling is, not really.
I don't think that's really true.
So how do you get from there?
So can you see the sincere feeling inside is, I don't think that's really true. That's the sincere feeling at the moment. It's not sincere measured with the law, because, from God's perspective, it's completely different, but that's how you feel. So this is the trouble, is when we're measuring ourselves, we are feeling what we feel and thinking, no, I'm right with that. That's what I feel is right. Can you see that?
Yeah.
And so you can say to do those things that you just mentioned before, but at the end of the day, you're probably not going to do them. And you're certainly probably not going to do them accurately, because internally the assessment is, no, I'm good. My sincere feeling about myself is, no, I'm good. Not, I don't even question in that place. I don't even have a point of pause when I'm in that place, because I'm already thinking internally that everything is good. And so there is no reason for me to pause. There's no reason for me to self-assess any further than that. All I'm going to do is go, no, I'm good. Must be something else. Like, sure, all these women are saying, you know, that I'm not treating them well, but, you know, they're demanding women, you know. I have other women that don't say that to me. You know, so those women must be just high needs women. High maintenance, you know.
So, would it be a case of asking God and then feeling a feeling coming back from God about that?
Well, of course, but...
Because...
Are you going to ask God?
Are you going to ask God sincerely when you already believe that you got it, no problem?
Well, the thing is, when I ask God about that, it's like tumbleweed.
What do you
As
mean?
in, there's no...
It's like, I ask
back.
God, and it's like, you see the tumbleweed going on the beach. That's like when I get back, there's just nothing.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So...
And you can understand why, because it's not sincere.
Yes. So I can see when I do that with God, and I get that kind of no response back.
Yeah, which means you're not sincere.
I can see that I'm not sincere there with that.
But even though, what do most of us do? No response from God, what do most of us do?
It's too hard, I give up.
Oh, I must be doing all right.
Oh.
There's nothing negative coming back. I'm on to it.
Or what else? What else do we do?
What's up with God? Like,
Exactly, what's up with God? What's up with God? Is there a God at all?
Yeah.
You know, maybe there's no God at all, because you know, I've asked and I'm not getting anything back, so maybe there's not even a God at all. But if there is one, what's up with him? Like I'm sincere.
Yep.
I'm
Some
sincere,
of you,
because
some
I
of you
believe I
even
am.
said that.
I believe I am sincere. So I'm sincere. What's going on with God? Well, obviously God doesn't like me very much or something. What's the go there?
yeah, that's the feeling I feel.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like, God doesn't like me now. I've done something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it now. Like.
Yeah. A lot of times we think that, or we think that God's not listening at all, or God doesn't exist, and that's why there's no answer, and there's many other permutations of those kind of beliefs, isn't there? So. Can you see how tricky it is to actually be sincere when you're coming from that place?
Well, this is the struggle. This is the struggle of it.
It's a big struggle. It's very, very difficult. So what's going to make us have that level of sincerity that appeals to the measure of the law? Remember, it has to appeal to the measure of the law governing the operation or the flow of Holy Spirit is all about truth and sincerity. So the law that governs God's love flowing into your soul has to be driven by a sincere, pure longing coming from yourself. So the law, you could say, is measuring your feelings. Can you see that? That's what it's actually doing. It's saying God's love can't flow into your soul unless certain aspects of the law are solved. And one of those the primary one being my sincerity. It has to be a sincere, real desire that I emotionally, not just intellectually, think, but emotionally feel. It has to be something that I feel I want, not something that I just think might want, right? And it's going to have to be in harmony with the demand of the law for it to work. And the demand of the law is I've got to be honest. I've got to be truthful. I've got to be sincere, and there's got to be longing. That's the demand of the law.
Could I just quickly ask on that?
Yep.
Because I have spoke to God about how I feel with my feelings with women.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just want women to think I'm a good guy.
Yep.
And if they don't, then I'm like, whatever.
Yeah. Move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Well, there isn't any women to move on to. So
At the moment, you mean?
Yeah.
You haven't found one.
Well, I'm deliberately choosing to be by myself.
Trying to. Yeah.
And,
but of course, you got women's spirits around you too, of course.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And of course, they're going to respond to your actual feelings,
Right.
not your. So you can isolate yourself, like become a hermit, right? Which is what you're basically trying to do now, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Become a hermit and try to manage it. I've got to work through this issue about women, so
Yes. Yeah.
I'm going to become a hermit. You know, every woman around, I'm just going, she's a woman, got to stay away from her.
That's basically what I've been doing.
That's basically what you did, yeah. And is it working?
Yeah, how's it going?
Well, I've been feeling lonely,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but you told me years ago I need to work through my loneliness,
You do, yeah.
and I have got into some stuff about it.
Yeah.
Um,
But has it substantially changed your belief that you're right about the women?
Not yet.
No.
Not yet.
No, that's
Not
right.
yet. So I feel like I'm in this process of the loneliness,
Yeah.
but then the stuff with the women, I feel that's not changed yet.
No.
So then I'm like, well, I better stay away from women.
So does that mean like it's going to be like this for another 100 years or?
Well, this is some of the thoughts I've been getting.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
if I don't change it, I could just be like this
For 100
for a
years?
long time.
You could, yeah.
And that's a bit crap.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's good to measure what the results may be. But see, the thing that's not being seen in that state is the unrighteousness.
The unrighteousness, what do you mean by that?
You're not seeing that your current state is unrighteous. You believe it's right. If you believe it's right, no change can occur. That's why no change occurs. No change occurs because we sincerely believe we're right to stay as we are.
So I'm sincerely believing it's right for me to withdraw.
No.
No.
You sincerely believe that you need to find a woman who's going to give you everything you want.
Right.
And then you kind of doing this intellectual process where you like, well,
And so in a way you're separating your soul now from your mind because you're trying to run it one way with your mind, which is I've got to restrict my behaviour with
Jesus
women.
said, I've got a problem with women, so
Yeah.
I'm just going to
Yep.
become a hermit on the hill.
So you sort of run it one
On
way
the
with your
hill,
mind.
You are on the hill, yeah.
Force yourself to that. Do you feel like forcing yourself to not be around women? Do you really feel like that?
Like when you come around women, do you just feel
my,
an
my
aversion?
feeling is I want them to think I'm alright.
Correct.
And so my feeling is I want to be
Around women, and they tell me I'm good.
Well, I want to be around people, men and women, but with women I want that feeling.
Well, I don't know if I'd agree with you wanting to be around people because I also see a competition with your father going on. So you don't want to be around men as much as you want to be around women. So
Okay.
again, like honesty is fleeting about a situation. So this is what I'm saying, Nikki. Now, I see this everywhere, where the honesty about the situation, we are so embroiled in the idea that we think we get what needs to be done, right? So this is the problem. The problem is we're going, okay, Jesus, I sort of trust Jesus. Not really, but sort of.
I do trust
Sort of,
what
yeah.
you say, yeah.
Yeah, not really though. Because it's rare that you do what I suggest. But anyway, you sort of trust me, right? Enough to go, maybe he's right about my treatment of women on that issue, right? But that's not the same as you believing it.
Yes, yeah, I agree with what you say there, yeah.
Does that make sense? So what's happened is you've listened to somebody who's teaching divine truth. You think he might be Jesus, and that's sort of a bit of a problem because it means you might have to listen to him more than you listen to other people. And that's one reason why a lot of people don't want to believe on Jesus, of course, because they don't want to listen at all. But the people who think they want to believe that I'm Jesus go, oh, well, I need to listen to him, but I don't really want to hear. I don't really want to do it. I don't. And can you see that's really how most people feel about God? That they think they need to listen to God if they want to have a relationship with God, but they don't really want to. Like they don't really want it in their heart. Want it.
Would they? It's like, well, like with you, he's right about a lot of things. It's just this bunch of things that he's wrong about,
Yeah.
and I don't want to listen to that because that's my definition of love or righteousness or how I'm good. And he keeps saying stuff about that, and I don't agree with that. But he's right about these other things, so it's quite a conundrum, isn't it? Because it's like, well, he seems okay on these issues,
And he treats me nice enough.
Yeah.
But, you know, he doesn't yell and scream at me and boss me around and tell me what to do.
Shame me. Or,
you know, shame me into doing anything or whatever. So he treats me nice enough, but at the end of the day, I don't know whether I agree with him here, right, in my heart. And this is the issue we have with God. We don't agree with God in our heart, right? Frequently we don't. We think we would like to. You see the difference between I'm thinking I would like to and I'm thinking there might be some benefits if I do, and I'm thinking in particular there might be some benefits to me if I do, not necessarily to everyone else, but oftentimes it's to me because I'm, you know, the average person on earth in particular is quite self-absorbed, so they're sort of looking more at themselves. But when it comes to actually agreeing in our heart, that is the real issue. And to be frank, that is also the issue that actually causes the most damage in a relationship. In a relationship, for the most part, each of us have a different view. And we don't agree in our heart. Now, how much you agree outwardly depends a lot about what you do by suppressing your heart. And trying to get agreement intellectually and go, okay, I'm trying to see your point, and you know, and what we call compromise, right? And compromise isn't agreeing. Compromise is disagreeing, but doing it in such a way where I'm going to compromise my idea in order to give the illusion of agreeing. It's not the same as agreeing. Agreeing is, in my heart I agree. That's how I really feel in my heart. Now, if I really feel something in my heart and Mary really feels the same thing in her heart, now we could say we agree. Right? The same applies with my relationship with God. If I really agree in my heart with God and God's law, now I can say I agree with God on that matter. Right? The issue we face with progress is impeded by how much we disagree and how much we try to give the illusion we agree while we disagree. You understand what I mean by that? Yeah. What we're trying to do with God is what we try to do with our partner. We're trying to go, oh yeah, I see God's point, you know, yeah, I get that. Yeah, I can sort of see the reasoning behind all of that, and I agree that I need to be more loving there. Yes, I was angry there and that wasn't very good, and I can see that. But none of that is agreement in our heart. That's us in our mind going, oh, I can see there's logical points, which is great, like you need to use your mind to see logical points, but we don't actually then translate that into what do I need to change in my heart to get to an agreement with God on the matter. Right? Just like if myself and Mary in a relationship are struggling, we're struggling because the amount of disagreements we have in our heart. Right? Now, if I can look at myself and go, wow, I really do disagree with Mary on that. Like, let's say Mary wants to go to China and I want to go to Japan. Right? Now, the average couple will go, well, we'll go to China and Japan. And all the while I'm in China, I'm going, I wish I was in Japan. And all the while Mary's in Japan, she's going, I wish I was in China. That's really what's happening.
I'll put up with Japan
but
as long as we can get to China.
As long as we get to China. As long as I eventually get what I want, I'll put up with giving the other person what they want. It's basically the fundamental way a lot of people run their relationships, right? That's not agreement. That's compromise. Now, God doesn't agree with compromise. So any relationship with God where you try to go, God's in China and I'm in Japan, and I want to be in Japan and God wants to be in China, that is going to be a problem with your relationship with God, because God's not going to compromise. God knows that love doesn't need compromise. Vicky?
But I've done the honest thing too, where I've said to God, I don't agree, this is blah, blah, blah. Like, my feelings towards women are this. Mm-hmm. And I hear nothing from God.
Correct, because he already knows that.
So, and this is what I've been
question.
So all you're doing is just saying to God, telling him something he already knows.
Yes, but the struggle is what you're saying. Going in my heart from that to that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people who have this struggle.
Same struggle.
Where they're intellectually aware and they can logically see,
Yeah.
yes, there's a problem here, but in their heart they still feel, no, it's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I'm at with that emotion with women.
Well, that's where you're at, if we're honest with ourselves. That's where we're at with almost everything when it comes to God, because if we weren't, we would be at one with God.
True, yeah.
So that's where we're at with almost everything when it comes to God. We're at this point of disagreement in our heart, right? And my question, like as I keep saying, is how do I change my heart to get from that place when internally I can feel, actually, I just really don't agree with God on these matters. I just really don't. Now, the majority of us, when we don't agree, do a number of different things. We're very prone to doing lots of different things in the place of disagreement. So you think about it in a relationship with your partner, what you would do if there was a fundamental disagreement. What are some of the things you do?
I could reel them off because I've done this for years.
Yeah, okay.
Numb out, avoid, withdraw, think it's too hard, I'm going to do it my way now because I've had enough now, I'm never going to get it.
Yeah.
Just stay by myself.
Yeah.
Focus on other things. You know,
So-
at least I can get some other things done
Yeah.
while I'm not getting this other thing.
Yeah.
So
So already
distraction.
you've mentioned 8 different ways.
Yeah, distraction, withdrawal, passive aggression.
I've done the whole
blaming.
list
Yeah.
of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is what we try with God. The same list.
And then I still feel like hopeless at the end of it.
Well, of course, because none of it works.
Exactly.
And anything that doesn't work, God doesn't respond to. And as a result of that, of course, you're going to feel hopeless, which is actually a good thing, because you need to feel hopeless about doing all the things that don't work.
Well, it is
Because
hopeless.
eventually you'll stop doing them once you feel hopeless enough about them. You might stop doing them. But the majority of us are not hopeless enough about them, are we? We think they're going to work. Because with the average person in a relationship, they work.
Yeah.
Right? So let's say myself and Mary are at a place of disagreement, and one of the first things is I just need to be calm, but I'll compromise. So that'll be one point that I'll try, right? And of all the other ones you mentioned, we could try every one of those things, and generally the other person will probably do the same with us.
Yeah.
Right?
And there's also other things you do, isn't there? There's attempts to manipulate, to outwardly argue and boss,
Boss them around.
condescend to them about their point of view, so that you think that they'll back off.
Honestly, we could probably list 100 methods, right? The average person, probably off the top of their head, if they gave it enough time, could list 100 different methods they use to cope with the fact that they disagree. But without actually saying,
Disagree.
I actually disagree and I can't compromise on it. Yeah.
Or I disagree and maybe I need to examine myself on that.
Well, what most people don't realise is the disagreement demonstrates you're not compromising in your heart. In your heart, you're still set, right? And so unless the heart changes, then no real possible change can occur. And remember, we said the soul progression is dependent upon what you feel in your heart about love. So unless that fundamentally changes, no real progression can occur.
And this is why a lot of people give up, don't they? Because they're like, oh, I'm stuck here.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel good. I know I've heard enough of God's truth to just feel like crap about what I intellectually know, but I feel like I can't change it. I'm just going to do all those things you said, numb out, withdraw, go away.
But then you're just hopeless at the end of it. And that's how...
Well, hopelessness is a rage in itself, isn't it?
It's all anger, isn't
It's
it?
all anger in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My way isn't
But
working.
if you want to go, no. You can keep it like that.
Oh, it was just when you were saying some things just then, I can't change it or something. Like, I feel like I don't want to change it. That's the problem. Like, I feel very glad that we're talking about this because I can relate to what Nikki's thing with my addictions with men.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just feeling like
I don't know.
I don't want to change it. That's the truth.
I think it's good.
And it's
yeah.
going to work at some point. It hasn't yet. But
It keeps
And
going
why
back.
hasn't it? It's because I haven't found the right man.
Yes.
yeah,
When I find the nice man,
then it'll be fine.
it'll all work.
Yeah.
It's like the hypothesis that you've proven by some not actual things happening, but you're just like, it's going to work, it's going to work. Yeah.
And I feel like I've just been questioning, like, how am I going to snap out of it?
Yeah, it's a very
I don't know
important question.
what's going to make me snap out of this, because I so believe it's going to work and I don't want to stop
Yeah, that's right.
trying.
That's right.
But it's good that you recognise that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't even recognise that. It
It is good.
It's
Betty,
good.
because it demonstrates more awareness than a person who doesn't do that.
There's a lot of people who go, no, I'm going to change it, but really they feel exactly like you do.
And they don't want to admit to themselves that.
And
they
it's
do.
painful admitting where you're at.
Mm.
That level of honesty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what Brittany's raised and what Nikki has raised there, you can see, okay, you can tell yourself your heart's changing, and you can even tell yourself that you're doing better, and you can tell yourself, but the law measures you, right? And the law, if nothing's changing with regard to how the law's measuring you, then at the end of the day, nothing's actually changing. It's like, and by the way, the law that measures your relationship with God is the most finessed law in the universe, because it's all about God's relationship with you and God actually saying, this is my requirements for a relationship with you. My requirement for a relationship with you is that you must be sincere. You must have integrity. That's God's requirement for a relationship with you. And that is our problem. The majority of us have been taught from a very, very young age how to not be sincere, and in particular how to not have integrity. We've been taught that by parents who also generally didn't have integrity or were sincere in many cases, and also a society that generally rewards a lack of sincerity. You see it happening all the time, right? You see even tiny little children saying, you say sorry now. But in their heart, do they feel sorry? No. They did it and they don't feel sorry. And a lot of them just go there like this, don't they? I'm not saying sorry. And the parents are going, you say sorry, you say sorry. And eventually they get browbeaten into saying sorry, and then they get a reward for it. Oh, everybody's happy with me now. There's a reward for me being completely insincere. Right? Now, that reward then gets reinforced over and over again through many, many experiences. So by the time we're adults, we believe that, and we often even know we're being insincere, but we believe that's the best course of action in terms of relating with people in particular. And so that's what we do. Mm-hmm.
So is it a case of just having this meltdown and going, I just don't get it? And
the hopeless
then you
feeling.
question.
The hopeless feeling is the avoidance of rage. The hopeless feeling is the avoidance of rage. And when you go into rage, you realise not only do you just don't get it, but you just don't want to get it. Right? As Brittany just said earlier, I want this, the thing that I'm being told, and by the way, I don't believe it's unloving, because if I did believe it was unloving, I probably wouldn't try to do it anymore. The thing I'm being told is unloving, I still think it's loving. So I'm not. Why would I want to do it? I believe in my heart that I'm right. So how do I get to a stage where I can say to myself, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And actually be sincere. And actually feel that you're wrong. That's the real question, isn't it? Like, to get to that stage where you realise, not only here in your mind you're wrong, but actually you start to feel, wow, I am wrong on this matter. And now I'm starting to sort of see, and by the way, that is the first time your soul has an opportunity to progress on the matter. You have to get to a state where you, in your heart, believe you are wrong on the matter, if you are, in order to change that matter. Because otherwise, in your heart, you'll be going, but I'm right, so why would I want to change anything? I'm right on the matter.
And anything you feel in that place, whether you tell yourself you're feeling that it's wrong, if you feel you're right, if your deep-seated belief is you're right, you're only ever feeling angry or in a tantrum or
Yeah.
hopeless, or you're never actually going to shift the real cause because you don't see there is a cause.
Because inside of your heart, you want the thing and you feel you should still have it. And when it's not given, you're just angry. When you try hard for it and you don't get it, you're angry or you get hopeless or whatever, but you still want it in your heart. So you're still going for the exactly same thing. And many of us, we even give up going for the thing because after 25 years of trying, we go, the whole of the last 25 years I've not met a nice girl.
And then you're like, oh, I'm done, type of feeling.
Yeah, I'm done with girls.
Yeah.
Let's try boys now. And that, might sound funny, but that's what people do. They even change the gender of their interest in order to get the thing they want rather than work through the reasons why they're not, why they're in disharmony with the Lord, right? And so we will do all sorts of things to convince ourselves that our righteous view is righteous from God's point of view. We do everything we can to convince ourselves of that. So, as I said, the question becomes, how does that change?
Exactly.
Nina?
How important is it that we actually get to the point where we go, look, I'm actually in pain and I'm actually unhappy?
Even then it's interesting, isn't it? Many of us admit we're in pain quite early, either particularly when it comes to love-based pain, emotional pain, but even physical pain, we often admit we're in pain. But what do we do with pain?
Oh, it's not that bad.
Well, we do the same things we do with what we do with not, recognising whether something is true or false or not. We go through all the same stages. Denial. We might accept it and we might feel it's hopeless. You might try methods of avoidance, so drugs and other things, alcohol, all sorts of things in order to avoid physical pain. We do the same emotionally. So recognising you're in pain might be good, but at the end of the day, the majority of us recognise we're in pain and we do nothing about that either. You think we would, but we don't. That's why the whole world's in pain right now. Hardly anybody was trying to do anything about the real reasons why, which is all to do with how much in disharmony with God's law we are. And yet, most of us don't see it. We plough on regardless. Even with extreme amounts of pain. People can be dying of cancer in such terrible ways, People getting murdered and killed in terrible ways, and we're all still living the same life, plugging away the same ways, thinking it's got nothing to do with us.
Somebody else.
And we even go so far as to say, a lot of the things that happen to us are just like chance and nature and diseases like bugs, like viruses.
Find something else to blame or...
We're always looking for something else to blame because that is the fundamental feeling we have, is everything but me is to blame for my pain. So you can be in pain and still not be at a state where you get sincere.
Where you're willing to do something about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Where you're actually willing to,
Inside
of yourself go, what if this is all to do with me and my choices? It's a rare thing on earth for somebody to do that, right? Yeah. In the spirit world it happens more regularly, and you know why? There's only really one reason why.
It's just more obvious that you're in a not good place, or?
Well, that's true, but it's not the main reason why. Ella?
It's because you get to a point where you're faced with so much pain that it's like you have to sort of like get to the point of meltdown crisisness, where it's like everything's just...
Well, that's also true, but not the main reason why.
What's the illusion you have on earth?
What's the illusion you have for you?
Somebody looking at you.
That everything's okay.
Everything's okay. Do you get to have that illusion then?
No, because that's taken away.
Yeah, because your condition determines where you are.
And your environment.
So your environment is in... You are stuck. While you are in the state you're in, you are stuck in this unpalatable environment, right? That is a reflection of your own condition. And because it reflects your own condition the most, it's the most unpalatable, given the condition. And this is why in the spirit world people start to change, because they go, wow, this is really where I'm at? Because their environment is saying, this is where they're at.
You can't go on holiday.
Yeah, here on earth, we get to live in an environment we can modify to a large degree and ignore to a large degree and separate ourselves from to a large degree.
It's like I can buy my block of land and I can set the law on that land. I'll do everything my way on that land, and then I'll just get into a bit of codependence with people, meet their addictions, they meet my addictions, and then I can just sort of live as my own sort of queen of in my own palace, if you like.
I can buy my comfort.
Yeah. And because
not just with money,
with
also
the
with trading with people and everything, I can
Yeah.
buy my comfort.
Yeah.
In the spirit world, you can't buy your comfort. Your comfort will be what it is, reflected directly to you. That makes sense? So, how the real thing we want to be able to do is get to the stage where we can see where we'll end up in the spirit world right now, and then we might be more reflective, might we, and go, well, that's not going to be too pleasant then. So what do I need to do about it now? That can help, but still won't change the feeling. So with that idea, this issue of not sort of thinking that you're good when you're not is such a big, like Mira and I were talking about it, as I said this morning while we were walking, about like how do you help a person who is convinced that their emotional attitude is right. It's very, very hard to convince the person. And even if you perform miracles, at the end of the day, it doesn't change their emotional attitude. Sometimes it does if you have a miracle for them. But even then, there were people I healed in the first century, their heart never changed at all.
So you were talking there, Jesus, about even miracles couldn't change a person's heart unless it happens to them.
Yep.
In Paul's situation in the first century then, because he really didn't like, people who listened to you, and then you appeared to him, and he changed after that point, because that miracle thing happened to him. What was that then for him?
Well, it's still the thing that happens to them has to be strong enough to change their attitude towards what they see as truth, what they see as the truth for themselves. And this is really the question I sort of have for you guys. Is like, what is going to how much is going to have to change for you to have that change? Like, what's going to have to happen to you to have that change? And
on that, you said before that we have to get to a point where we feel that we've got a problem, that we're in the wrong, that there's something wrong with the way we're feeling.
Yep.
My question is, how do you know when you're feeling that, or when? And now you just said how much does it take of feeling that? How do you see?
Well, from God's perspective, if it's sincere, it takes how long?
It shouldn't take any time at all if you're sincere.
Blink of an eye, right?
But getting to that point.
Well, yeah, that's the real question, isn't it? Getting to the point of sincerity.
Yeah.
That is the real question. That's the difficulty we face, isn't it? And it's a valid question which we want to discuss, obviously. Helena?
Where does faith come into this?
It's a very good question. So I'm actually waiting for somebody to ask that question. Where does it come into?
Are you asking?
What is faith? Let's look at what faith is. Ella?
A belief in like something that's for your future, that's going to be better in the future, or like a desire for things that you might not be able to see or might not be happening now, but that you believe or dream or imagine could happen.
It's not just dream or imagine could happen. It's stronger than that.
That will happen for an actual fact.
for an actual fact, yes.
Yep.
Yep. That you feel in your heart will happen for an actual fact. Yep. Yep. Elena?
So, what if you have faith in one of the 5 principles, but you don't have faith in another one? Could you use that faith?
Like you have faith in
Right.
truth,
Correct.
but you
not
don't
in
have faith in the
humility.
other. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, good question. What happens?
Well, could you kind of...
You already know what happens because that's what happens to you.
It doesn't translate. Or...
Well, what happens?
Think about it.
You think about
What's
it.
happening?
And you don't have to answer off the top of your head if you don't want to.
But I just because I have faith in truth does not mean I have faith in humility. I don't have faith in humility. And then anger comes up about it.
Correct. So obviously you have faith in truth, so you start to face the truth and you really like the truth and everything, but you don't have faith in humility, so now every time you face the truth you're upset. Yep, so it's pretty uncomfortable, isn't it? Like every time you have to face the truth you're upset. It's like, I'm going to be upset a lot if I'm in a lot of error from God's perspective and I like the truth, then I'm going to be upset a lot if I don't have humility, aren't I? Which is
that's my life. Yeah.
That's your life, right? Yeah, you get upset a lot, and that's what happens because the second thing has not been developed sincerely yet. So no faith in humility means that you don't want to go through feelings, and you don't believe that going through the feelings will solve the problem.
Don't have any faith in that.
Yeah, you don't have faith that going through feelings will solve a problem. So it's sort of like, I have faith in truth. Truth is good. But when it comes to humility, it's like, humility is bad, no faith in that. So, of course, it's going to require fixing the level of faith, isn't it, somehow?
In humility.
In the thing that's lacking.
In my case.
In the thing that's lacking, yes. So unfortunately, for most of us on earth, we don't have any faith in love, which is the very thing we're saying we're striving for.
I don't have faith in that either.
No, most people don't. What do we have faith in instead of love?
Addiction, yeah.
We have faith that some kind of barter is going to work for us. Some kind of codependent, I give this and the other person gives me that, and we come to some kind of arrangement, right? That's what I have faith in. I have faith in making arrangements, right, that are based on me giving something and getting something in return. Basically, I'm saying I have faith in the monetary system, in an emotional level, in the sense that I'm paying for something, so I should get something. Does that make sense? Yeah. And that's what we really have faith in. We really have faith that I have to pay, in other words, sacrifice, and in the process of sacrificing, I'll get somebody sacrificing for me in return. And then we're good.
Then I get to feel, I have the illusion, don't I, of safety.
The illusion of love.
I'm loved, I'm safe, everything's going to work out. I have all this faith in this very corrupt system.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's not faith in love, is it? From God's perspective, that's faith in barter. That's faith in codependent addiction. That's faith in a monetary system, in a payment system, in a sacrifice system. That's what I've got faith in. And most people on earth have got faith in a sacrifice system, where they pay for something, they spend something, they should get something in return. And when they don't get something in return, it's like, what?
Up in arms.
Yeah, because we expected it. Yep. And that demonstrates it was not love in the first place.
This reminds me a lot of Christianity. It's all about sacrificing something so that you can...
Of course, the whole premise of my death was about sacrificing for the human race. So of course it's a very big thing in Christianity. But it's also a very big thing in almost everybody's relationships. Most people in a relationship, and this is why they find it so easy to believe in a religious idea that begins with sacrifice, because they feel a relationship begins with sacrifice.
Starting from your relationship with your parents, obviously, there's an expectation that you really sacrifice yourself in that relationship.
And a relationship with children, definitely. Most people believe sacrifice. I'm sacrificing myself for my children. And then when it comes to a partnership, then obviously most people feel the same way, don't they? I'm going to sacrifice myself for the sake of this barter system where I'm earning, the payment is my sacrifice, and what I get back is the other person's sacrifice. Or what I think that I want that they may or may not wish to give me. And most of us are prepared to go through that. In fact, you take away payment from almost any transaction on earth and nothing will happen. That's the net result. That most of us believe in it on a relationship level as well as in a business level. We believe this is the way most of us live our life. It's a payment system, a barter system, or you could also call it a sacrifice system. Now, in my heart, if I believe in that system, can you see I haven't got any faith in love? From God's definition of love. No faith in love. Now, to progress with my soul, to actually make soul progress, to develop my soul, I'm going to have faith in the 4 fundamental things that are going to help me progress. The first thing is I'm going to have faith that faith works. So I'm even going to have faith in faith, right? And then I have to have some faith in love, some faith in truth, and some faith in humility. Right? Unless I have those things, fundamentally, I'm going to proceed with the payment system. I'm going to proceed with the barter system. And that's going to mean that I won't have any motivation to look at myself. The payment system actually gives you a motivation to look at the other person. Mm-hmm. Basically what a payment system does is I'm saying to myself, I really like Mary and I'd like some things from her. What am I going to have to do to get those things from Mary? You follow?
Oh, yeah.
What am I going to have to do to get those things from Mary? And if she's interested in me, she's probably thinking the same thing. Right? What am I going to have to do? And for many of us, we even do the things naturally because we've been taught to do them. So it's not even a thought anymore. It's just like, I've got to do these things for Mary. And she feels like, I've got to do these things for him because I want the relationship, so that's what I've got to do. Right? There's this automatic feeling that is there because we've been taught from the time we were born to have it, right? These automatic feelings. And so we are not even conscious on any level, like intellectually or emotionally, conscious that we're already in a barter system in most cases, right? And certainly not in a love system, but a barter system. So in order for me to progress, as we've been talking about, we need the 5 things, don't we? We need the faith, the love, the desire for love, which is faith in love. We need the desire for truth, which is faith in truth. And we need the desire for humility, which is faith in humility. And we need to have faith that taking action will result in forward movement. Right? So the 5th being action. We need to have faith in those things. We have faith that those things work. The problem is, if we're really honest with ourselves, the majority of us don't believe in one or more, or sometimes even all of those things. Mm-hmm. We don't believe they work. Right? We are so used to living in a world that rewards other things. That, for the most part, before we even hear God's truth, we're not even aware there is such a thing as faith, humility, love and truth, and that progress can happen. We don't even have that much development to even see that we even need to look at any of that. We just live our life day to day without hardly any awareness at all, for the most part. And this is the case for the average person on earth because the addictions are so much in play that I believe that's the only way I can get what I want out of life. So you can see how big a problem it is, right? This is a fundamental problem on earth, and it's a fundamental problem affecting a person's ability to receive God's love. Right? To receive God's love, the law demands my sincerity, my integrity. It demands it. And as soon as I'm out of sincerity or integrity, there's no response from God. with regard to the reception of God's love. And if people were in harmony with God, there would also be no response from people either. But unfortunately, the majority of people on earth aren't in harmony with God's love. They're in harmony with the payment system, the barter system, the sacrifice system. And so that we think, because we've grown up in a world right from birth, we've grown up in a world where that happens. We believe that's what has to happen. And we believe that's what love is. Right? That's what we feel. So, if that's what is happening, how do I change it? Now, should we talk about, you want to say how you're going to change it? Or would you first like to talk about who's responsible for changing it?
That's an easy
And
one.
maybe how I'm going to change it is actually related to who I believe is responsible for changing it. Can you see the link?
You see the unlink that usually happens.
Nikki?
Obviously it's me, but the whole feeling in the room just went, "Ugh."
Yeah, so what does that tell me? See, obviously the only person who can change me is me. That's, if we've got any semblance of logic in us, we must accept that at some point, right? But can you feel what you feel when you're told that actually you have to change it?
The feeling was no.
Yeah, what do we actually feel? Let's be honest about what we actually feel.
I should get help, somebody should help me with it, somebody should...
Okay, so somebody should help me, right? Who's that person going to be? It's going to be another person who wants help themselves, most probably. But that's what we think. What else? Cecily?
It's too hard.
It's too hard. But what does that mean, Cec? Look,
I don't want to.
really, that's what it means, doesn't it? It's because I don't want to put forward the effort. Like, it's going to be a difficult job, and I don't think it's worth the effort. Is really the underlying feeling there, isn't it? Yeah. What else? Okay, Alan, please.
Connected with that is I don't want to take responsibility for it because I do want someone else to help me do it.
Yeah, I'm looking for a saviour. Huh? Yeah, I'm looking for a Messiah who has, from the conception of, he's going to come along and do all the things I don't want to do for me, he will do so I don't have to do those things. Isn't that what many of us feel? We want somebody to come along and say, you don't have to do all of those things. I've got a secret recipe, fast way of making all those things happen where you don't have to go through any trouble.
It's like extended pain, isn't it? It's like, oh, I felt bad for half an hour there, and come on, like
that's enough now.
Not like there's going to be 3 months of me having to see new parts of this and release it, and to the point where I feel like I've actually kind of cleared something, and I feel different towards women, for example.
Yeah. So a lot of it is I don't want to put forward the effort, isn't it? And obviously if I don't want to put forward the effort, it means that I don't have faith that the effort will bring about a change, a resolution of my problems. So that's obviously faith, the lack of faith drives my lack of effort. Lena?
I feel like it's also not wanting to give up addictions.
Yeah.
That's what I'm feeling about humility. I'm like, I can see that's just addictions. That's the biggest thing that's keeping me from humility.
Yeah. Yep. So why would I not want to give up addiction? What's my underlying belief there?
Well, it's going back to what you're saying, is having faith in the barter system as opposed to love.
Yeah, but why would I have faith in it when I know it's a barter system? It's like logically, if we just think about it from a pure space of logic, if I have to earn Mary's love by sacrificing, do I have her love?
No, it's not actual love.
It's not actual love.
It's a substitute.
It's my unwillingness to see that it's not actually love.
So seeing it for what it is.
Seeing it for what it is. I've had to earn it. So it's not actually love. It's a payment system. I had to pay something and then I got a reward for that payment. Right? I have to be honest with myself enough to even just see that. Like, if I've had to earn it, then it wasn't love in the first place that I'm getting. And why would I want to get something that wasn't love in the first place? That doesn't make any sense, does it? Like, why would I want to earn it and then go, oh, isn't it lovely? I'm getting this lovely thing from Mary now. But I've had to earn it. So at the end of the day, am I really getting this loving thing from Mary? Really? No, I'm not. I just don't want to face the reality that the thing that I'm hoping for is not there.
Right, because then you have to look at your whole life has been like that.
Of course.
That's
From birth onwards,
pretty
as
ugly.
I said.
Yeah.
We've been taught to be like this. Yeah. So we're not even prepared to be honest enough to admit to ourselves that frequently what we think is love is not even love. Because I had to earn it. And therefore it wasn't love in the first place. I had to work for it. I had to pay my dues to receive it. So it obviously wasn't love. And I'm not even willing to be honest and say that's true. Yeah? Al?
I think I mentioned this once before, but someone's actually written a book on how to do it. So it's called the 5 Love Languages.
Yeah.
You know, give your time, you give them, affection, or you give them
That's
money, or whatever.
We just had a mic drop out, I think. Didn't
Oh.
No,
No?
you just
I'm
got a
waiting.
bit
Waiting.
Okay.
repeat offender.
Sorry.
Yeah. The 5 love languages, the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I just give Jesus affection, or we talk.
So Jesus' love language is affection.
So I just have to touch him.
So you've got to touch me up a lot. So, but there's had to be an action taken in order to receive. So obviously not a real thing. Yep. Nikki?
I feel with this I've got a bit of anger with God a bit too, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Because I feel like God requires of me these things for me to get more love from God. And I feel a bit upset about that.
Yep.
As well.
It's not to get more love from God.
That's how I feel though,
No,
in my error. But
I know that's what you feel, but it's actually so you can feel more of God's love for you. Like God already loves you.
Oh, okay.
He wants to give it to everybody. It's just in the state you're in, you can't feel it.
You don't even think it's love.
It can't flow into you.
Yes, yeah.
So the average person goes, oh, I'm earning love from God now. No, you're not. God already loves you. You just can't feel it. And the reason why you can't feel it is because of all these reasons.
Okay, yes, yeah.
Yeah. So if you ask God how God feels about any of you and you can feel it, you would know straight away that you're loved. But we can't feel it because of our so-called love languages, which are all demands. They're all addictions. They're all
Proof of love.
proof of love. They're all payment, barter, sacrifice systems. Yeah. Interesting, hey? It's like I have to learn that I need to change in order to demonstrate or get to a state of a pure longing for God's love in order to receive it. And that's because I can't feel it unless I do those things. Yeah. So, but most of us go, oh, but I'm not feeling it, so it must be like, in a relationship, you're not feeling loved. Who must it be? It's usually you don't think it's you, do you? It's like you don't think, oh, maybe I can't feel very well. You go, what's up with you? Not responding to the barter system, in the right way. And of course, each of us also, when it comes to the barter system, have a very, very imbalanced barter system. It's always in favour of self, for the most part. So it's sort of like the things that I am favouring are the things that I'm expecting. So And that applies even with things like guilt and stuff like that, like shame. If I favour shame, then I want someone to shame me occasionally in order to feel love. Which is really weird, isn't it? Really, but it's what we do.
It's weird.
It's really strange, but that's how far we've gone away from the definition of love that God has. So, in order for change to happen, I've obviously got to have a very, very strong feeling about the 5 principles that drive change. Faith, love, truth, humility, and action. I've got to have inside of myself a very strong feeling that this is where I want to go. I need to love those things. I need to come to love those things in my heart. Now that doing it in your heart is such a tricky thing, because it's just like you've got to be able to get to the stage where I don't have it there. I don't feel it there. I don't see it there, you know. I can see, you know, most of us can see, if we're honest enough, we can see, in my day-to-day life I sort of, I'm not really very truthful. Example. Like, an example of that is like my partner asks me, do I feel this? And I go, I don't think so. Or, oh no, I'm okay. When I'm not, you know. I do things like that all the time. Most people do that all the time, let's say. That's us not really feeling like that. Feeling in our heart for truth. We don't trust it. We don't trust that it's all going to be good. And when we're asked to say the truth, frequently the people who are asking us to say the truth don't want to hear it. Right? And often what we're doing internally is we're assessing in that. And we're going, they don't really want to hear it, so I won't tell them. Right? So this is part of our problem, isn't it? We are assessing from the emotional perspective of others. We're assessing whether it's wise for us to live in harmony with those 5 principles. Right? We don't love the principles more than we love ourselves or anybody else. We put ourselves above the principles. So if you look at the principle, for example, of personal integrity, which is basically being the same person you are with everybody and being honest and truthful about that with everybody. That's personal integrity, isn't it? And living up to that state all the time. If you look at that personal integrity, that's a principle. That is more important than how you feel. There's sometimes when you have personal integrity, you're going to be embarrassed because you realise, I've got this other thing, and if I'm really honest, I'd admit that, right? So you'll be embarrassed sometimes. But if you put your feelings of embarrassment, the avoidance of your feelings of embarrassment above personal integrity, you won't do that. You'll sacrifice personal integrity, drop of a hat. You will sacrifice it immediately for the sake of not feeling some uncomfortable emotion, right? So if that is the case, then personal integrity, you could say, is there in terms of a standard, let's say halfway, should we call it 50%? There's my personal integrity. It could go either way depending upon what the importance is I place on other things. Mm-hmm. So if I place an importance on, say, peace, rather than personal integrity, right? And what I mean by peace is maintaining a semblance of seeming calm when actually I'm in disagreement, right? Then what will happen is I will sacrifice my personal integrity for the sake of peace. Now, if personal integrity was at 100%, I would not sacrifice anything else for the sake of it. Everything else is of lesser importance. So that means my feelings are less important than me staying in a state of personal integrity. Do you follow that? Now, if it was the same with truth, right? And that was at 100%, then you could see that there's no situation where I would withhold it. If love was at 100%, God's definition of love, there is no situation where I would withhold love from any person. Right? If humility was at 100%, there is no situation where I wouldn't first feel my feelings before I did something. Can you see that? If these principles that drive progress were like properly developed inside of me, then there's nothing that is worth sacrificing for them. There's nothing they will be sacrificed for, because they are all more important than what you could sacrifice for them. So it's very important to get to the stage where those principles are like solid in you to the point where they're 100% solid. Yeah. Let's go, Helena.
I feel like this comes back to Brittany's comment, which I totally identified with, where she's like, I want the barter with men, I don't want to change it.
Yep, so that's truthful.
That's, yes. And so, but you're saying you need to look at what that actually is and be truthful about what that actually is, how it's not love.
Well, not only that you could say the truth scale, that is truthful. But it's not humility.
No.
In fact, the humility is 0 on the matter. Does that make sense? So the humility on that is 0. The truth scale, honest, so therefore it was 100% truthful. But humility, 0. Don't want to go through the feelings. Don't want to work through the issues.
And the integrity scale, if you like.
Yep. Right down there.
Because you're willing to, sacrifice a lot of loving principles to get this thing.
Exactly, because if you're saying, I like sin, basically. I like sinning.
Yep.
Where's the humility there? Because shouldn't I feel bad?
Well, it's truthful, but there's not much humility in it, is there?
Yeah, and there's no integrity
And there's no integrity in it. And there's also no love in it, because the desire to love is not driving me to do something different. And there's no desire to be loving with others in that.
Yep.
Right?
Or take action to change it.
Or take loving action in harmony with it, you see. So yes, it's really wonderful to be truthful, because at least there's 100% on one thing. Isn't it? It's true, isn't it? Like if Brittany just said, no, I'm not like that, no, and really she is like that, then that would mean all the scales are 0.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't be very good at all, would it? At least there has to be one. There's one there that I get to the point where at least there's one.
That's a place to start.
It's a good place to start, isn't it?
If you really love the truth, then it'll help you shine a light on all the zeros, won't it?
Yeah, if you really love the truth, you're going, right, I'm being truthful and that's really good, but I'm not being very loving and that's not very good. You would be looking at the other scales, wouldn't you? And you'd be going, you're honestly looking at them as well. And that would help you start to develop some integrity in the other areas. So you might have some integrity with saying true, being truthful, but it would help you to have integrity in other areas if you could start going, but I'm not very humble, and but I don't want to be loving, and I don't really want to take any positive loving action about this, and really, when it boils down to it, my main problem is I don't have faith that being humble and being loving is going to work, because that's really what's driving my behaviour. I obviously have some faith in truth, because I'm at least able to state it. Right, so quite often I meet very wonderful people who have, bluntly honest about everything. And it's really good spending a bit of time with them, because I find them to be, just put this back on, I find them to be enjoyable to spend time with. But it's only in the area of truth.
Because a lot of the world is zeroing out on most of the scales, aren't they?
Yeah.
So you meet someone who's up on one scale, it's great. It's refreshing.
I love being around truthful people.
Yeah, of course. So it's a breath of fresh air, isn't it? Yeah. Yep. But also it's a breath of fresh air being around loving people.
Even more so.
And it's a breath of fresh air being around your humble people. And it's a breath of fresh air being around people who have faith. right? So you know, while we have one thing and not the others, we've got to be more honest with ourselves and go, okay, the real issue here is my lack of faith in the place of integrity.
Yeah, and there's like, say for Brit, in her example, there's a lot of truth in her past that she's unwilling to uncover and feel about that is driving her lack of faith. So she's truthful about the effects. The effects are, I want this addiction with men. But there's a whole lot of stuff that has caused you to have faith in that, if you like, a corrupted faith.
Yep.
Preventing you having a faith that, no, if I'm loving and truthful and humble, I'm going to be good with men. I'm going to be able to love men, you know.
Yeah, even if they don't love me.
Yeah. And I'm going to be safe in that place when I love men. And in fact, at the moment you think the only safety is the addiction.
Yep.
But this is where, you know, you can be truthful about the effects, but are you going to be truthful about the causes?
So there's even layers with regard to the truth, isn't there? Like, frequently we're honest, or becoming honest, you could say, about effects, but frequently we are completely avoiding the cause at the same time. Yeah.
So you're saying, because when you actually start being truthful about the cause, it'll bring up the emotion, which is the humility scale.
That's right.
And that's where I don't want to go.
That's right. That's where most people don't want to go.
Because that means feeling the pain and being truthful with the pain of it, and my life and what a mess that
and
area is.
Giving up some addictions.
And giving up the addiction of wanting that thing.
Yep.
Like, if I don't get it now, what's that going to mean about me?
It's not even what it means about you, though, is it? It's also, if I don't get it right now, then I'm not content. I'm not
happy. I don't feel good.
I don't feel good.
I don't feel comfortable.
I could feel bad for a long time, potentially.
Yeah, and this is the thing, is that people look at giving up addictions and they go, but if I give up addictions, what am I left with? And there's a genuine faith that they're not going to be left with anything.
Yes, I've got I have a feeling when I see or you know when you see like a drunk someone who's addicted to alcohol,
yeah,
and they drink, and you know if they give up alcohol, their life will get better. You can see that.
Yeah.
But with the emotional addiction, I don't have that feeling.
No, but it is the same principle.
But it's the same principle, but I don't have the faith in that if I give up my emotional addiction, I'll actually be happier.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's a disconnect between seeing it physically.
That's right.
And
seeing it emotionally.
Yeah.
And this is true because the majority of us don't believe in morals.
Yeah.
Helena?
The drinking is a good example because I remember when I did give up drinking, it wasn't like I was just happier all of a sudden. It took years of just shit sucking. I just really wanted to drink.
Yeah.
So it's probably the same thing with
Well, yeah, and why did it take years? It's because the addiction covered over a lot of things you were avoiding, and it took years for you to deal with that.
Right.
Right. That's why it was easier to drink.
Yeah, absolutely.
Than it was to face the truth of all those things.
Right. So even though I could hear other people saying it'd be better if you didn't drink so much, Lena, it'd be better if you didn't smoke so much weed.
Yeah.
In my soul, I thought, no, it won't, and because I'm not going to be happy when I give those things up. I'm going to be very, very unhappy.
Well, you're faced with what you're trying to avoid.
Extended amount of time.
Yeah. And so the faith is saying, but if I give up all of these things that I think are good, what am I left with? I'm left with nothing. Nothing. And how happy am I going to be then? At least I've got this false belief that I'm happy now. Then I would have to come face to face with the reality that I'm very unhappy and there's nothing going to save me from it. I can't go to the addiction to save me from it. Right? But there's no faith in, if I deal with the real thing, I will become happy again. There's no faith in that. Right? So frequently what happens is a person is confronted with their addictions. They even have some intellectual awareness of their addiction. They attempt using a little bit of effort to address it. In the little bit of effort they find, this is quite painful. I don't want to go through that. Which is a lack of humility. Which means the humility scale is 0, right? Even though you're being truthful with yourself. Humility scale 0, right? Yep.
Or you get sick, you know, like if you try to give up addictions but you don't feel, then you get sick.
Of course, but that is again just another
avoidance. Another avoidance. Yep.
Was another proof of it. It's an effect of avoidance.
Right.
Yep.
And then
Are we only talking to Nikki and
Nikki and Helena show.
And then the faith one.
Yeah.
That is having faith that no, God has love for me in amongst all of this stuff I'm going through.
Yeah.
And if I can just have the truth scale up and the humility.
Yep.
That something good is going to come out of it.
In other words, if I believe in God's principles, God's way, and I actually do God's way 100% of the time because I love it, everything will work out. I don't have faith in that. Because God's way involves humility, faith, love, faith, and action. Like, I have to do those things in order for change to occur. If I don't have faith in any one of those things, the net result is going to be
no progress.
No progress. Paul?
So I've been holding my breath in this discussion, waiting for you to tell us how to do this.
I've already told you how to do that, haven't I?
Well, not well enough for me. not
honest, but that's too bad, man.
Not in a way that I sort of wanted it, but this
what do you want, Paul?
So this is,
you want to do it without integrity. You want to receive love without having to change your heart.
I want God to take it away.
Yeah, you do.
Yes.
That's why you were so addicted to the Christian faith, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You're desperate for there to be an easy way. Yes. When you first heard divine truth, you go, oh, I think this is wonderful because all I've got to do is pray for God's love and everything will go.
Yes.
That's what you originally felt.
Yes.
And that's what the average person who hears the truth initially feels.
Yeah.
Not understanding that the problem is not the reception of God's love so much as is your own personal integrity, because you can't receive God's love without it. Now, it is true that God's love, when you receive it, will change you.
Yeah.
But you can't receive it without some personal integrity.
No.
You can't receive it without the longing being sincere.
Yeah.
So the problem is not the receiving of the love. The problem is the lack of integrity. And you're not prepared to deal with your lack of integrity.
Which is effort.
Well, it requires all the things we've already mentioned.
Yes.
It requires effort, seeing yourself accurately, seeing yourself in harmony with the law. It requires desiring to love, desiring others. God's view of love, not my own. Desiring to give up the barter and not have barter anymore in your life. Desiring to address the issues of truth, where you want to be truthful in your life all the time. This is what's required to get sincere. When you're sincere, you'll receive love whenever you ask for it.
Yeah.
Every celestial heaven, every person in the celestial heavens, when they ask for love, they receive it.
Yeah.
Every single time. Because they have worked through all the things that have blocked their sincerity.
Yeah.
You understand? Now, the problem you have when you start from a condition of sin is there's very little sincerity at all. Like, most of the earth has like almost zero sincerity. You see it playing out everywhere in your own life, but also everywhere in society. Lack of sincerity. Lack of sincerity is rewarded in the world we live in, right? Many of us then believe, why isn't God just coming to rescue me with God's love? Well, God's totally willing to rescue you with God's love. He's totally willing to give you love, but there's one thing that it's dependent on.
Is my effort and sincerity.
Your longing that is based on sincerity and desire, passion and desire.
Yes. And so how to get there? You know, this is what the whole discussion, like how do we get sincere?
That's up to you.
Yes.
This is my point.
Yes.
My point is, no one is going to come along and save you from your lack of sincerity. You are the person who's going to have to do that.
My responsibility.
That's your responsibility. God's not going to wipe out your lack of sincerity. Your lack of sincerity is an exercise of your will. So God's not going to change it. You are the one that's going to have to change your lack of sincerity. And there's a lot of ways you can do that, right? And if you were sincere, you would even see that. There's a lot of ways you can do that, right? But the majority of us are going, I want to be rescued from my pain and suffering so that inside of me, everything is now beautiful and calm and, I'm loving now. But I want to do it without there being any process through the whole thing.
Yeah, and not being taking personal responsibility for it.
Yeah.
And not feeling uncomfortable.
Yes.
Not having to.
I don't want to go through anything. I just want to have the end result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want the choices to come easy and to, not have any pain that you have to let go of in the. Yeah. When we start making loving choices from a place of sin, there's going to be some pain.
Yeah. But receiving love is not. You're not being precluded from receiving God's love for any other reason than your own lack of sincerity. It's not because God's withdrawn it from you for any particular reason other than the fact that it can't flow into you without sincerity. So unless you are prepared to deal with the lack of sincerity, no change is actually possible. And for yourself, Paul, you're not prepared to deal with it. You haven't been prepared to deal with it up to now, right? What you want to do is you want to be saved from your own lack of sincerity.
Yeah. And this is sort of how it happens for me, because I feel like this is pretty painful being in this addiction.
Yeah.
And when I feel I let go of addiction a bit, I think, oh, this feels better. I feel more on track.
Yep.
And that. But how do I get a little bit like Britt said, and like how do I get to a place where I want to be more loving, I want to be more sincere, because I'm back and forwards, and it's quite.
There's no such thing as back and forward when you want to be.
Yeah, you make the decision and it
sticks. Yeah. There's no back and forward about it. Yes. When you make a transition inside of yourself with regard to having some personal integrity about the issue, you will no longer make any sometimes days I do and some days I don't thing. It'll be like, no, this is my life. Now, my life looks like this. My goal in life is I want to receive God's love. So, my goal in life is to get sincere. Because without the getting sincere, I can't receive the love. And I want the love, so I'm going to get sincere. Right? And once you make that internal decision inside of yourself, then you'll find yourself looking at yourself more honestly. You'll find yourself wanting to give up your addictions more readily. You'll find yourself being more truthful. You'll find yourself being more humble. You'll go through your things you need to go through because you've made a decision that you know that your integrity is the thing that's going to drive your future. When it comes to God, your integrity is the thing that's going to drive your future. By the way, also if you progress without God, integrity is going to drive your future, right? Because the Lord requires integrity with every change, right? So integrity is a quality you're going to need to develop with or without God. Anyway, if you want to progress, if you want to have true soul progression, integrity is important. All of a sudden, it started ringing.
And can I say, like the 5 tools, developing them, like developing faith, like if I've got faith in the barber and I want to change that, is that something that we can just really sort of really pray for and really want and help me to really change my faith?
Well, you want to pray for it without putting forward a personal effort. So I'd be working more on the personal effort rather than the prayer. You're using prayer like an addiction. You're basically saying, I don't want to have to do it myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask God to do it for me. Right? And this is where most of us have a fundamental problem. God's saying, it's your will. It's your life. God's saying to you, I can't make you sincere. Like to do so would be actually completely against every one of God's laws governing free will.
The whole design of the universe.
So you're praying for something that he can never do. Does that make sense? He is not going to do it. He is not going to make you more sincere. He's not even going to make you look at how sincere you are. He's not even going to do that. That makes sense? And so it's very important to understand that I am the one who's going to have to do this if I want to receive anything from God. Anything about love from God. Because all the laws require my integrity in order to operate.
Maybe I don't have faith that I can do it a bit,
Well, that's true, but that's just a feeling, Paul.
Yeah.
That's just a feeling you're not being humble to up until now. It is true that you don't have faith that you can do it, but it's just a feeling. It can be gone through. It can be felt. It's not hard to feel it. I've felt it many times, right? It's just a feeling you have not been prepared up until now to feel. Make sense? So yes, we go, but it's this and but it's that and but it's this and but it's that. And really all we're saying is, but I got feelings. and God's saying, yeah. That's why you feel the way you do. You got feelings. Right? And it doesn't change anything. Because yes, you have feelings. And you're basically saying, but I got feelings and that's the reason why I shouldn't have to have integrity. And God's saying, no, not a good reason. There's no good reason for a lack of integrity. None at all. Threat of death, still not a reason from God's perspective. Right? There's no good reason for you to have lack of integrity. So from God's perspective, God's going, hang on a sec, stop putting some kind of feeling in the sense of that your emotions somehow matter here. Right? They only matter because they're your feelings and you need to get rid of them. They're in your way. You need to have them. You can't just avoid them. You can't say, oh, they're in my way, so I'm going to avoid them now. No, you have to have them in order to get rid of them. But when we're unprepared to feel the feelings, we're basically saying integrity is here, 50%. Feelings are like, no, feelings are like 80%. That's a lot worse. So I can't have integrity. Right? That's really what we're doing. We're saying saving my feelings is more important than developing these beautiful qualities like faith, integrity, humility, love, desire for truth, which are all, from God's perspective, the measure of beauty. And I'm going, no, I don't want those things. Because those things are not as important as me saving my feelings. Right? And all that is, well, there's a number of things there, isn't there? There's probably lack of courage in dealing with your feelings. But isn't it better to have courage and deal with your feelings than have a lack of courage? Because courage is also another principle. It's a principled feeling that eventually all of us are going to need at some point or other. So why not start developing now with regard to your feelings? Right? You don't even have to go out your door to do that. You don't have to engage the world so much to do that. You can just do that at home. Right? So there's no valid, justifiable reason for why we do not develop personal integrity. And you can say, but I've got feelings and I've got to feel this and I've got to feel that. Yeah, sure. And God's going, so what? Isn't integrity more important than that? Isn't a quality that is going to be a permanent, everlasting thing eventually in your soul more important than these temporary, transitory, painful emotions that by the time you've felt them, they'll be gone? You've got to weigh it up and go, permanent thing, temporary thing, which is more important? Right? The painful emotions are all temporary in nature. Right? They never last forever, because if you truly feel them, they can't last forever. They leave you and they're gone. Right? So God's saying, here's the principled thing, integrity. Here's the little fart emotion you have. Right?
Smelly and short-lived.
Smelly and short-lived. Deal with it. Not make my emotion a monster so big that it overcomes my attitude of integrity. It overcomes this beautiful principle. My making an emotion bigger than a principle is my failure.
And I think that sort of false beliefs around stuff like that, like thinking that it's a no-go place, that's sort of a wrong concept of how to do it, like that God would erase it, or that it's my job and I need to grow up, in a sense too.
Well, God wants all of us to be adults, right? And an adult is able to handle their own emotions 100% of the time. They're able to feel their own emotions and not act unlovingly through the process of feeling them. They're able to act lovingly while they're feeling their emotions 100% of the time. That's what an adult is. Now, it is true that most of us are children, because even when we are, looking like adults, we're children, because we've barely grown up from when we were 3, when we could hardly handle anything, right? Most of us are like that, and we've been nursed into being like that. That is all true. But God's going, so what? Logically, you know that it's not working. Logically, you know that it's not loving to do these things. So stop putting your feelings ahead of the principles. When I say putting them ahead of, what I mean is you're trying to save yourself from your feelings and you're willing to compromise the principle. And that's not good. And this is the main reason why we don't have integrity. We're not receiving love from God, because we're willing to sacrifice principles for the sake of our feelings. So if you can give up that one thing, you'll find change you'll be underway. Yeah. Well, I reckon that's about it.
Yeah.
Now, does anyone have any questions about what I just said? I think it was pretty plain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
So is integrity one of our soul faculties, or we're still more responsible for developing that?
Every principled thing is a soul faculty. Its development depends upon...
So part of your character that God put a personality in you and all these capacities, but your character is something you must develop.
Yeah, and the principles are a part of your character. Yeah. You've got to develop them.
Love of truth, your
so that
desire for
character, integrity,
courage, faith, love, humility.
Taking loving action.
Yeah, these are all character traits that you can develop or neglect.
There's a part of me in this minute that kind of likes the idea that I can develop that.
Yeah.
That God's given me that to do.
That's right. And not only that, I find it very fascinating that God has designed it in such a way that you first have to discover the quality, even by yourself, discover what it means and how it feels and everything, and then you can develop it. Like, even the discovery of the quality is up to you. That's what development of character is all about. You discover the thing, and then there's your own personal, you could say, personality involved in how you're going to develop it. But at the end of the day, it's a quality that exists for everybody. Potentially everybody can have it, but you have to discover it yourself and want to develop it yourself. That's what your will is about. God has given you, so you could say basically today is a lesson in how to exercise your will.
And sincerity is one of those things.
Yeah.
It's an expression of your will and a development of character, actually.
Yeah. Without sincerity, the tricky thing about sincerity is without it, receiving God's love is impossible. Right? So it's such an important thing to develop, to be honest and real and sincere and have personal integrity in oneself. Because without it, no relationship with God is possible. Yeah.
Or anyone.
Or anyone really, if you think about it. Yeah. If you think about it, not even a relationship with a partner is possible, right?
Myself.
Even with yourself, yeah. That's right. You don't even know yourself until you start having some personal integrity. So this is why you will find in the discovery of these qualities that the qualities, like the principles, are so important, because without them, your entire life almost means nothing. Right?
It's so feeling. It's meaningful. It's a really meaningful thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's very rewarding as well.
Yeah. And not only that, with personal integrity, you'll end up having some pride in yourself. You'll end up having some love of yourself. You'll end up having some self-respect. You'll end up having some other people you will find. Even the people who don't like me very much respect that I have some personal integrity. Yeah. And a lot of them will even say that he's got personal integrity. He does mean what he says, and he does think what he says.
He lives by what he teaches.
I just don't like him, but that's how it is, right?
He's deluded, but he's sincere.
That's their lack of integrity, though, isn't it?
Well, at least I'm being honest about how they feel. I feel, but you will find in your future that even the people that don't like you will at least respect you enough, because they'll realise, there's a person with integrity, and I can't even manipulate them out of it in any way. Like, they're immovable. Now, some of them will be upset that they can't move you off of it. That is true. Some of them are going to be upset that you are unable to, you're unable to be shifted on the issues of integrity. They'll be annoyed with that. There'll be many spirits annoyed with you about that too, by the way, because there's many spirits who use your lack of integrity to meet their own addictions. So they'll be upset too. But at the end of the day, you'll be happy. And also, more than that, God will also be happy to bet that you're now feeling God's love, not just talking about it or trying to do something with it, but actually feeling it. Because one of the things God wants to do is give you the gift of her love. Like, for God wants to make your life more pleasurable. Like, you're the object of God's care. God wants you to feel happier. God wants you to feel more content. God wants you to feel more beautiful and loved. That's what God wants for you, right? So God's not there going, I think she needs a bit of a punishment first before, before I give her some love. That's not how God feels. But the lack of integrity stops it from ever being felt. Yep. And that's why God has made it a requirement that a sincere longing is a prayer. Alan?
You know how love and truth are joined at the hip?
Yep.
I think I'm getting that vision of sincerity, desire and will are joined at the hips, because
Well, if you think about desire, that is faith, isn't it?
Yes.
Yep. And sincerity is really truth, isn't it? But it's truthfulness with oneself.
And truthfulness with one's, like a loving intention as well, isn't it?
That's right.
It's all that loving and use of the word.
So you could say, when we talk about truth, we're talking about a sort of a quality that has literally hundreds of parts to it. One of which is sincerity, right? Another of which is personal integrity, right? These are all fundamental parts of what make up the quality of truth. It's just like if you think about love, what makes up love? There's caring, there's consideration, there's listening, there's all these different things that make up the quality of love. So when we talk about faith, love, truth, humility, these qualities, these fundamental 4 qualities which are required for your progression, they are nuanced because they have literally hundreds of parts to them. Each of them have hundreds of parts to make up what it means or what is defined to be. Now, in the past, what I've done in order to simplify things for you is to come up with some very simple sort of definitions, if you like, of what each thing is. So what is humility? What is faith? What is love? But actually, as you progress, you'll find they are more and more and far more complex than you have ever imagined. It makes sense? Yeah. And so don't be surprised in your future that when you start thinking about love, you go, wow, it's not just love. It's like love involves all these things that we use the word love to convey the message of. But actually, if we were really being descriptive, we'd have to use caring, consideration, and all these other words as well as a part of it to describe what love is. You follow? And it's the same with faith, it's the same with humility, it's the same with truth. And personal integrity is a fundamental part of truth. Morals are a fundamental part of truth. Right? You can't talk about truth and be without morals. You can't talk about truth and be without personal integrity. You can't talk about truth and be without sincerity. Because they are all part and parcel of what makes up the quality of truth. Yeah?
And this is why when we receive, like when part of God's love enters us, these quality of parts of the qualities of truth enter us, and we come to and like you were saying before, this discovery of these qualities is nuanced and it's personal, right. And it's the personal application of these things. It's the personal expression of truth. Is sincerity, is integrity, is morality. Yeah. It's not just I feel annoyed today. We call that truthfulness.
Yeah. And it's also like when God designed your soul, He gave you a personality. Now you can enjoy your personality. You can, when I say enjoy it, you can discover it and be it. Right? But when it comes to the principles, He didn't give you that. There are things you have to choose to develop. You're using your will. And as you develop them, they will become a part of you. So when someone thinks of Alwyn in the future, they're going to think, not only are they going to think Alwyn personality and feel her personality, but they're also going to go, Alwyn, she's also got that principle.
Woman of character, woman of integrity.
Of truth now in her. Because you have made it, by the choice of your will, you have made it a part of you. Mm-hmm. Now, the beauty of receiving God's love is that you can make the qualities a part of you faster. Right? But sincerity is something you have to develop within yourself before that can happen. So it's such an important quality in that regard. All of these qualities like faith and humility, they're dependent on you. Somebody can't make you humble. Somebody can't make you have integrity. Someone can't make you have faith. These are things that you are going to have to do for yourself at some point. Now, somebody can encourage it by telling you truths, and somebody can encourage it by, encouraging you along a certain direction. But at the end of the day, you need to do it for yourself in order for it to be a part of you. So, in order for sincerity, personal integrity, morals, and a pure desire for God's love to exist inside of you, you are going to have to make that a part of you. And you can pray all you like for somebody else to make that a part of you, and it's never going to happen because the prayer is not in harmony with God's truth. Right? So remember, Paul said earlier, I'd like to pray to be more humble. I don't pray to be more humble. I tell myself, be humble. Do you know what I mean? Because I realise that I need to be humble. It's not something somebody's going to give to me. It's something that I will choose to do for myself. Now, obviously, the more of God's love I receive, the more prone I will be to be humble. Because an aspect of love is humility. Right? So I'll be more prone to it. But I can't even receive God's love without firstly having some of development inside of me to be humble. Right? Very important to understand. Nina.
It's like they're gifts that God's put on the table for us.
Yep, they are.
The opportunities, actually.
Yeah, and they're principles that can become a part of you. So they're principles, but they're also gifts that you can either accept or reject. Yep. And you some of them you have to learn. What you have to do is you have to learn what they are. You have to develop the idea that you want it. And to receive it, you're going to have to work through the sincerity to get to that point where you're prepared to receive it, right? Where you want to receive it, where you want to become that, right? So God's love is going to help you do all of those things, but without sincerity, God's love can't flow. Without personal integrity, God's love can't flow. So that is going to be a necessary part of what you need to do. And isn't that appropriate? Like, if you've got a whole heap of things inside of you blocking you, the only person who can get rid of those things is you. It makes sense, doesn't it? You can't expect God to get rid of things in you where you are keeping them, and because then God's going, well, I'm in disagreement with you about that. God's going, I can't get rid of them for you, and you're saying you want God to. Now we're at stalemate.
Well, you're saying, like, God, I want you to overpower my will and make me a robot just for this bit so that you can get all this stuff out of me.
It might be easier.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be easier, by the way. Like, the easiest way is God's way.
Yeah.
You know, God doesn't make the hardest way to do something. He makes the easiest way to do something. Everything humans create, just make it harder.
Yes.
But if you think about a little child who is unaffected by, its parents, it can cry easily. It doesn't have a problem with that. It doesn't find humility hard. It absorbs information, questions all the time, asking things all the time. What's this? What's that? What's this? What's that? When it needs to cry, has a cry.
And also it's in tune with cause and effect and the use of will, Oh, I dropped this, it broke. Oh, I fell over, that hurt. We as parents and society get in the way of that. And then we say, oh, God, this is really hard, me having to understand that my will has an effect on my life. But really, that's what God's been trying to show us all the time. And if you just refine your will emotionally, you're going to be happier. And that's what, if God took away that process in some way of you understanding that would do you so much damage. That's what's happened to us already. And it's been so damaging. Then we think it's somebody else has got to fix my problem, I can't, or, it's somebody else's fault, or, oh, it's too hard, I can't cope. All these things are actually lies that we've been told as kids that are actually damaging our future happiness. If God took away our understanding of the preciousness and the power of our will by suddenly coming along and going, ta-da, you're humble, you'd miss out on really understanding the strength of your will. Like, if you are not humble right now, if I'm not humble right now, I'm using a lot of my will to be in that state, and I need to understand that that's under my control, and that's very powerful.
And it's also a damaging use of my will.
That my will has the power to bring great joy to myself and others, or great pain,
Yeah, it's good. Susan?
I was sort of reflecting on what you're saying today and feedback that I've had in the past, and I realised for me also it really involves rooting out a lot of the principles or rules that I've imbibed from my parents that were given to me with a lot of logic. They're
so-called
I wouldn't call it logic.
Yeah, not that logic, but a logic that a child might take on board.
Well, there's a logic with a lot of imposition. There's an emotional imposition, and so as a child, the psychology of it is, as a child, anything that your parents fundamentally opposed, you listening to it became difficult. Anything that your parents fundamentally agreed with your listening to it became easy. And so there's this distorted sense of logic that develops from that. And that is a psychological issue most of us are going to face when it comes to giving up those things. But it's not true. It's not really logical truth. What our parents presented to us was their fundamentally flawed principles, but you were open to them because if you went in another direction, not only would there be the principle flaw, but there'll now be a huge emotional backlash from your parent. So there is a large amount of predisposition in a child to accept its parents' logic, even when it's completely illogical.
And in those places, you're still living from being a child instead of being
correct.
An adult.
And you're still often living as a child. Yeah, even as an adult, you're still really a child in the way you interact with things a lot of times. And that's a part of that damage. And as you go through it, you realise all that. And if you didn't go through it, you would repeat it.
Which is what I do.
Yeah, you repeat it with your own children, right? And things like that. So this is why it's so important to go through the learning process ourselves, because in the process of it, we will, once we realise how bad certain things are, we will never do them again. And once we realise how good things are, some things are, we will always do them. And that's the beauty of the learning process.
That's quite a process, though, isn't it?
Well, who cares? See, you want to, when in saying that, the feeling is, but it's going to take a long time. No, it isn't. It doesn't have to. It depends totally upon desire, passion and desire, and obviously receiving God's love is going to help you immensely do that. The problem is you want to go, most people want to go, but it's all so hard, it's all so difficult. Aren't we terrible? Aren't we all poor?
And the thing that's lacking there is sincerity.
That's right. And all we're realising is we just don't want to put in the effort. We want someone to magically come along and go, this is why there's stories of fairy tales with fairy godmothers with wands, isn't it? Because the average person wants and on you and you're wonderful, and that's what the average person wants, and it's unrealistic, right? It's not what God wants for us because we don't learn anything in it.
I'm just thinking, reflecting. I remember the first time I found you guys in Divine Truth. I listened for 6 months. All the time. And I was like, it all feels true. It feels like it's possible, receiving love from God. My desire was building. And I got to a point after 6 months where I was like, I'm not leaving my room until I receive love from God. And I felt it as soon as I felt that feeling.
That's right.
And I've not had that same sincerity with my sin with women. I've not gone to myself. I'm not leaving where I'm at until
that's right.
I understand it and I've got it, and however long it takes, I'm going to do it.
And it's then that it doesn't take very long. After that, it doesn't take very long, and that's the irony of our situation. Most of us sort of go, but it's going to take a long time. It's going to do it. And in that place, we're not realising I'm just not sincere right now. Right? It's when I'm going, okay, I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to be really sincere about this. Next day, usually, we start sorting the issue, right? So a lot of the times, it's that, and this is why God's made it this way, the lack of sincerity is the thing that's stopping us. The lack of personal integrity is the thing that's stopping us. And when a person does have personal integrity, God's answers are instant. There's no delays. There's no wait for next week. God wants to give you what God wants to give you, and He wants to give it now. Not tomorrow, now. And the only thing stopping Him is you. And that's the thing we've got to realise. Now, a lot of people want to hear something different to that, right? And you can see whole religions have been created on people wanting to hear something different to that. But that is the fact. What I've just said is the fact. God wants to give you her love now, and the only thing stopping that from happening is you and your integrity. Not your sin. Not your sin. Not your sin. your integrity. You understand the difference? Your sin is like a bucket load of stuff, right?
It's sort of fine.
But God doesn't stop people who sin from receiving love. So it's not your sin that's the problem, it's the integrity that's the problem, right? When a sincere longing exists, you will always receive. So it's the integrity that's the issue. And there's all reasons why we might not have integrity, but whatever they are, we need to address them because that's what's stopping us from progress. So it's very important to understand it's not the sin. So you can think, oh, but I've got this problem and I've got that problem, I've got this problem, I've got that problem, and look at me doing this, and look at how I treat women, and look at how I treat men, and look how I treat my own children. And all. None of those things are stopping you from receiving God's love. The only thing stopping you is your lack of integrity, your lack of sincere desire. It's the only thing.
I've never just sat down and applied how I applied with God the first time of receiving love from God to this problem with women.
To every problem.
Yeah, I've not actually gone, I'm going to solve it, I'm going to deal with it.
And the reason why, Nikki, is because some problems are much bigger in us than we realised at the beginning. They're much bigger and they are much more, there's much more emotion in them than we realise. At the beginning, when you receive God's love, it's like you're fairly, what I would classify as ignorant, right? And so you don't really know how much is in you at that time, and you don't really understand what's really going on. And so you have a moment of sincerity and you receive some love and you go, okay, where's the next bit? You know what I mean? And the next bit is always dependent upon the sincerity, the integrity, right? Not on the sin. So the trouble is we start seeing more of our sins. And we go, maybe that's why God's not giving me love.
Yep.
So you not receiving love is not dependent upon you dealing with this issue with women, although there are things in this issue that are obviously going to prevent you from being sincere. Right? So that needs to be addressed. But there's the sincerity every single time that stops you from receiving the love. Right? No other thing. Developing a sincere longing. Yep. And as I said, there's a lot in sincerity. Truth. There's, facing reality. In myself, facing reality. The reason why I wanted to raise this with you guys today is because what I see is there's not a lot of sort of focus on what is the problem. The problem being the lack of sincerity, the lack of personal integrity. There's not a lot of focus on that. And that's what needs to change if you want to receive God's love. And, I see many of you being insincere with yourselves and with others. And so therefore, naturally, you're going to be insincere with God too, right? And of course, that's going to mean that no love can flow. All right, well, Mary and I need to go through this sort of pack-up regime that we need to do for the first time, so we need to finish it there. Now, we don't need your help, because if we get your help, then we won't remember how to do it. So what we need to do is we need to do it ourselves. So all you guys need to sort out are your chairs. And got to leave everything
for Elle's house.
But got to leave the tech for us.
Thanks for having us again, Elle.